Discord sent us 2 questions this week, and they always say, you know, it's a tie, choose one, but second one is interesting too, so let's go ahead and read that one. Hypothesis. Research into psilocybin is being openly flowed to pharma for profit. The decision to isolate a single compound from mushrooms and test it in isolation will be used to justify control and profit. Or so well. The scientific community has followed along gratefully, and it will be judged alongside other pharma drugs without the natural occurrence and adjacent compounds being understood. Is the fix in?
Yep. And not only that, it's not, I think there are 2 big problems. One of them is the isolation of the one target compound from all of the other stuff that might make it work. The other is the medicalization of the whole phenomenon. And it's not that I don't want medicos, I don't, you know, not just allopathic doctors, but it's not that I don't want medical science to have access to this tool. Of course it should. But I don't want the idea, oh, that this is a medicine. You know what we need with medicines? We need to limit who can prescribe them, and we only give them to people, you know, who this, that, and the other, who need them, right? And the answer is no. I actually think there's a question about whether or not you should go spend a sunny afternoon sitting by a stream, having taken mushrooms about which you can't fully control their impact. You know, I think there's, and I'm not arguing that you should do this, but I'm asking if you should not have the right to make the decision that at this moment, actually, I think that's a good idea to do, that maybe, you know, this afternoon I should take, you know, a light dose and I should go hike.
That's right.
On some other afternoon, maybe you want to take what they call a heroic dose and have a confrontation with some broken part of your psyche that you think it might help, right? That's not a fundamentally medical question. That's a fundamentally human question. And so I don't like the idea of any industry capturing this because I do think there's something sacred about your right to encounter a compound that selection produced in a mushroom that human beings have been leveraging for various purposes for certainly many thousands of years, probably tens of thousands of years. It does not make sense to treat that as a technological phenomenon.
So I have a apropos, story from something I wrote in Natural Selections this year. This piece, you can show my screen if you like, Zach, that I called Fish, Fishy, and Fish Adjacent. Why eat like an Inuit when you can pop a pill? And it's about, well, I'm just going to read a tiny section here. The first paragraph, the first 2 paragraphs, and then the part that's relevant to what we're talking about here is down below. In 1913, the people living on the northwest coast of Greenland were described as probably the most exquisitely carnivorous people on Earth. They subsisted almost entirely on the meat of whales, seals, seabirds, and fish, of which the dominant species were halibut, capelin, and salmon. They ate almost no carbohydrates at all, and yet they thrived. More than half a century later, in 1971, researchers found that these same people had extremely low levels of heart disease and no diabetes at all. Rather than engaging in collective hand-wringing about how people with such awful diets could possibly be so hale and hearty, the health of these exquisitely carnivorous people was attributed to just one part of their diet, fish, and so was born a new dietary trend. And we talked about this. We talked about this on Dark Horse, I remember it, because we're like, well, they weren't exactly going to start recommending that we all eat seabirds, right? Or whales, or seals. They just weren't going to get very far with that. So they went with fish and the fish that we already ate. And so you then had this craze for fish oil. And then shortly thereafter, or not that shortly thereafter, there's this new product that shows up. And you can show my screen again. This is Vascepa. I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, but honestly, I don't really care. So Vascepa uses basically a patented version of one of the 2 known active molecules in fish oil that's maybe good for us. And that's it. Like, that's it. But the people at Vascepa really want you to take Vascepa and not fish oil, and certainly not just eat fish, right? And they have this amazing table chart, I don't know, infographic. Let's go with infographic on their website about why Vascepa is much better than fish oil supplements. And I go through the analysis of this, and like, it's insane. But one of the things they say is Fish oil supplements, what's wrong with it? Oh, well, obviously, also look, the fish smells
Stinky.
stinky fish, right? But the third bullet point down is fish oil supplements not intended or approved to treat heart disease. So what I read that as is it can't possibly be medicine. And if it's not medicine, it can't possibly be used to treat a problem you might have, unless it was created by people who are calling it medicine, and the only people who would do that have a profit motive. So basically, you can be sure that unless the thing that you are taking doesn't make a profit for someone, it's probably not good for you, and you should find the thing that makes money for someone else.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing here, right? To go back to the psilocybin and whatever ingredient, whatever molecule they find, or 6 molecules, or 3 classes of molecules, each of which has 6 possible molecular forms in it, they are then going to say that's the thing you want, and that's the only thing because it's safe, because we can titrate it for you, as opposed to sitting on a beach, in a park, in your lovely living room that you have surrounded yourself with all that you love, and saying, I'm going to take a little bit, I'm going to take a lot, and you know what? I don't know exactly how much, but I've been very careful. I know that these are the species that they say they are. And let's see. Like, that's part of what the trip is about, is not knowing exactly. Even if you measure it on a scale, you still don't know exactly, because caps and stems have different amounts and different mushrooms have different amounts. And that is part of the value, is in not getting just the same exact dose every single time.
Yeah, it's yet one more example where something sacred is turned into a consumable.
Yeah.
And it's not that you don't consume mushrooms, but you consume them, but that's not what they're about. In fact, it's the worst part of the entire thing is the consuming of the mushroom.
Oh, it's terrible. Totally.
It is. It's very unpleasant. And, I don't think I would fix that if I could.
Right.
I think the point is actually, it's not supposed to be a pill you can pop. Right? It's something else. It's something that, ancestors going back innumerable generations have confronted the unpleasantness. And frankly, the risk. I mean, think about the comparison here. You've got an industry which manifestly does not give a shit about poisoning you. Okay? This is an industry that poisons people on the regular. Every day of the week, they're poisoning people and not caring, right? They are going to give you a pill that is going to make it impossible for the detectors that you're being poisoned to go off, right? It's going to be encapsulated just so, have you ever had Tylenol stick in your throat so that it melts? Have you ever?
God, so terrible.
There is nothing more bitter in the universe. It is the most bitter substance in the world.
And of course, that's telling you something.
It is. That's the thing. And we've talked about this sometimes. In the forest, yes, there are things you should not eat, and there are things you can eat. And one way to tell, you take the red berry off the bush, you put it on your tongue, and if it's the least bit bitter, you don't consume the damn thing. That bitterness is your way of knowing that your body regards this as a hazard. Tylenol is incredibly bitter, but you don't know that because you swallow it in such a way that by the time it starts doing its thing, it's long past your ability to detect bitterness. And anyway, my point about the mushrooms is your ability to safely ingest psilocybin mushrooms is downstream of wisdom about which mushrooms are edible, which mushrooms are poisonous, and which ones are edible but have this cognitive effect, right? So do you prefer to have an industry that poisons people every day, or do you prefer to have the wisdom of people who've been figuring out how to thread that needle and provide you this cognitive experience without poisoning you, right? Frankly, I'd rather go with that latter category. I don't trust pharma to deal with my mushrooms at all. I really don't.
No.
Yeah.
No. So is the fix in? Yeah.
Yeah, the fix is in.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate, but there it is.